So I want to start off with a little trivia question, which is, what is this blessing that we're about to do? What's different about it than all the other blessings that we've done so far? It says me. You're good answers, but not quite there yet. It's more personal than the others. Yes, you're right that it's more personal, but there's also something that's different about it than all the others, right? Like it's past tense, right? All the other ones, okay, except for the ones where you have made for not having made me a slave, right? But for all the other ones, who gives sight to the blind, who releases the bound, who straightens the bent, who spreads out the earth, who has provided me my every need. Why do you think this one would be in the past tense and not in the present tense?
For a certain amount of time before we're saying it, so we're acknowledging that up until now, every need has been provided for.
Okay, anything else? Because we could also acknowledge it and acknowledge the present as well and say, like, who provides me with all my needs instead of who has provided me. Any other thoughts of why it might?
When it say provided me for every need, then we should be satisfied even though we think we don't have everything that we want.
Yeah, that's a beautiful point because this is such a blessing if you think about it. If you stop and think about it for a minute, right? I mean, I don't know about all of you, but do you ever have times in your life where you kind of feel like you don't have everything you need? No, never. No one can relate to what I'm talking about, right? It's we're making this blessing, and what we're supposed to do when we make this blessing is actually pause and stop and think and say that I have everything that I need in my life. Those things that I still want in my life, you can still want them. And to still recognize that we don't need them, because if we needed them, we would have them. So it's a super, super powerful blessing. Now, let me ask you a question. When someone's going through a difficulty, when someone's going through a challenge, do they often feel, do they feel like they have everything they need? No. And what happens sometimes? Afterwards, after they go through the challenge, after the challenge is
Then
over.
they realize good that was in the challenge.
Sometimes afterwards they'll realize, only afterwards, with hindsight, they'll be able to see that I had everything I need, right? So for example, let's say someone loses their job and they can be distraught about it and think like, I need a job, right? How can this be? And then they realize later on that actually it was a good thing that that happened to me. Sometimes we see this, sometimes we don't see it. But one of the reasons why this blessing is in the past tense, because sometimes in the present tense, it's too difficult to realize. But what we can realize is by looking back at things and seeing like, look, even though at the time I felt like I didn't have what I need, whether it was financial, whether it was emotional needs, whether it was physical health, whatever it was that the person felt like they didn't have that they need, but in the end, I had everything I need, because we're looking at this from a soul perspective, right? And what it means when I says I have everything I need, it means I have everything I need in order to fulfill my soul mission in this world, right? In order to fulfill my soul curriculum. I think we use that word sometimes from time to time. Yes, Jackie.
Well, that happened to me because I realized that having a recurrence of cancer led me to do what I'm doing now and is fulfilling my soul's mission.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. 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 So it's often only in hindsight, though, that you can recognize that, right? So that's why we make this blessing in hindsight. What's very interesting is there's a story of Yaakov and Esau, and Jacob and Esau. So they didn't like each other that much, right? If you know the story, they hated each other. And Esau wanted to kill Yaakov. So what did Yaakov do? He sent him some animals as a gift. And Esau turned around to him and said, "Thank you very much, but I have a lot." To which basically what he's telling him is I don't need your gifts. I've got plenty. And what did Yaakov respond? Yaakov responded and said, "Take it, because I have everything." And the rabbis comment on the difference between those two approaches, right? There's one person who says, I have a lot. And here's another person who says, I have everything. Now, obviously, they're both people that have gratitude. What's the difference between someone who feels like I have a lot and someone who feels like I have everything? Is there a difference?
Yes, I think saying I have everything, it shows a wisdom because you have the important things.
And he felt like he had everything.
Yeah.
The person who says, I have a lot, do they want for more?
Yeah, sometimes.
It sounds like it.
It could be.
Possibly.
It could be, right? Because I have a lot. I could feel like I have a lot of money and still want more. I could feel like I have a lot of, a lot of space in my house and still want more. I can feel like I have a lot of friends and still want more. But the person who says I have everything, do they want for more?
No.
No, they don't want for more at all. And the Talmud actually says that because Yaakov had this mindset and this attitude and this feeling of I have everything, he experienced the bliss of the world to come in this world. Why? Because he had total contentment, right? He wasn't wanting for everything. He genuinely felt and believed that I have everything. And this is the idea that this blessing is supposed to inculcate in us, is this idea of I have everything I need. God has given me everything I need. Any thoughts, any questions, any comments? Yeah. So I want to put the story in context, right? So Yaakov and Esav were going to meet, and the meeting was because Esav was about to kill him, right? That was the context of the meeting. So what did Yaakov do is in advance, he sent gifts of a ton of animals or whatever with a messenger, right? So it wasn't him who was sending it, was with a messenger. The messengers came back and said, Asa said, whatever, thank you, but I have a lot, right? Like I don't need more of your gifts, I have a lot. To which his response was, take it, right, through the messenger, because I have everything. I have everything I need, right? I'm not really hearing the arrogance in it, because it's like if someone comes to you, I'll give you an example, right? Last night from after Tu B'Shvat event, there was a lot of grapes left over. So there was a few people there. I said, we offer them grapes to take. So someone would have said, I have everything I need, right? So it's not an arrogant thing. It's a contentment. I have everything I need. So I don't need to, someone offers to go to the grocery store for you, and you turn around to them and say, no, I have everything. It's coming from a place of I'm content with what I have. I don't want for anything.
Firms man's footsteps.
Firms.
I call it guides because that's how I always say it in my head.
Mechin, it really, I think it's a more literal translation is probably prepares. So prepares, guides, firms. What does it mean? Prepares man's footsteps.
I would like to say, I mean, for me, that's like one of the most important prayers for me is like every day I'm asking God to guide me, like help me make this decision, me guide my kids, help me know what the next step is to do. So I feel like that's like constantly talking to God. That's what I'm always asking him for in many ways.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you. There's an interesting story told about a rabbi who was living in pre-war Europe when things were not so great for the Jews. And he's out one Shabbat morning for a walk. He was on the way to shul, and he gets stopped by a police officer, and the police officer says to him, papers, whatever, who are you, what's, identity, etc. And he says to him, where are you going? So he says, I don't know, where God wants me to go. And the police officer thinks he's like, joking with him and messing him around, and he arrests him and throws him into the prison. And he says to him, look, that's my point exactly, is that I thought I was going to shul. I thought I was going to the synagogue, but I ended up in jail. I don't know whether it's a true story or not, but the point of the story is that what this blessing is saying is that God prepares our footsteps, right? That God guides us. Does anyone here in this room believe in signs? Signs from God. The truth is, God is involved in our life. Like, how much is God involved in our life? As much as we let him. What does that mean, as much as we let him? It means that God sends us signs, but they're signs, and it's up to us for how we interpret it or not. On Monday morning, I was giving this class, and someone was telling me that there was someone who was in a car accident, and it was a really, really bad car accident. And she got out of the car, and the paramedic said to her, wow, it's amazing that you were driving a Subaru, I think it was. Like, it's amazing that you walked out of this car accident. And the lady texted her friend and said, I had a miracle that happened to me. Now, what happens there is that lady had a choice. She could have seen it was like, wow, what a coincidence. How lucky I am that I was driving this particular car. Or she chose to see it as, for some reason, God saved my life. And we all have signs, and sometimes they're more subtle, sometimes they're more in our face, but we all have signs. But the more we choose to become sensitive to those signs and see them as the signs that they are, the more that God continues to send those signs into our life. And this is what we're kind of saying in this blessing is that thank you, God, for preparing my footsteps, right? For guiding me along the way, for helping me get to where I need to get to in life. And what it means as well is that the situations that we get into in life is not just a mistake or a coincidence. It's there as part of our soul curriculum. It's there for us to develop our souls and to fulfill our potential.
A quick example, like I'm having some challenging things in my business that I'm trying to do, and it put me in this deep depression for a couple of weeks. And then something else came along that was even better than what I thought I lost. And so it then makes me reflect on life. It's like for me, I have to see life a little differently.
Thank you for sharing.
Isn't it having faith?
Yeah.
It's having faith that if it's not working out, it's not working out for a reason. So it's not clinging on because I have faith that this is what's going to work. It's letting go because this isn't working for a reason.
Right, it's
And it's
having the
making
faith
space.
to be able to let go.
And again, it's nuance, right? Sometimes the right thing is to let go, and sometimes the right thing is to power through. And that's where it's good to have, whether it's a rabbi, a mentor, or someone that you can talk to, or even good friends that you can share these sorts of things with and discuss things with. Okay, who would like to read the next blessing, please?
So blessed are you.
Courage. Okay. Faith.
Persistence.
No one said like physical strength yet. So Berachot HaShachar talks about strength, and it says, who is strong? Does anyone know what it says? He who conquers his desires, right? Because what it's talking about is strength is not measured. When it talks about the strength of Israel, what does it mean, the strength of Israel? What sort of strength is it talking about? It's not talking about strength in relation to someone else. Because if someone is stronger than someone else, it doesn't necessarily mean they're strong. It could be that the other person's just weak, right? Instead, it's talking about our strength in relation to ourselves, right? That someone who can conquer their desires, right? Do the right thing regardless of what their desires are telling them to do. That's someone who has true strength. Now, why is this related to the Jewish people? Because it doesn't just say who blesses me with strength. It says who blesses Israel with strength. What's the connection between strength and Israel?
Israel's strength comes from God's promise to give the Jewish people a homeland. So Israel is more of a spiritual place.
Okay. Beautiful. Thank you.
I just think of all these soldiers. October 7th happens, and what happens? They all get up and they run and they say, I'm gonna help. And they even, soldiers in the US jumped on a plane and flew to Israel. This commitment and this devotion.
Yeah. And where does it come from? I want to read out a quote to you. The Jewish people's strength is a unique strength. It is a strength that is manifest not through the conquering of others by overpowering them or destroying them. Rather, it is a strength that comes from the ability of man to conquer himself or herself. This is a strength of the divine soul, the ability of person to conquer their physicality and their base desires, which is thousands of times better than the strength to take over a city. This is a strength that girds the Jewish people, the foundation of pure morality and the pinnacle of man that raises them above the animals, right? This idea that the Torah, which gives us the guidelines, right? We spoke last week about boundaries. And what it does is it helps us conquer ourselves, and it helps us live up to our higher self. That is what the true strength of the Jewish people is the ability to rise above ourselves, to conquer ourselves, and to live up to our higher self. Any thoughts or comments? Okay, let's read on to the next one, please. It brings glory to the Jewish people. What does this blessing mean? What do you hear when you hear?
I have a very special this bless. Okay, so when I was married, I wore a very, very intricate scarf, right? And every time I would tie, I think of this bracha every time I tie my techel. I don't know, it just felt like it's this beauty, like it's almost like a radiant thing. It feels like a radiance, like that Hashem gives Israel radiance.
How do we earn this glory? How do the Jewish people earn this glory?
When we accepted the Torah.
Yes, and though I would say I would just change the tense and say when we accept the Torah, right? When we do the right thing.
Right.
That is when Marla said like a light to the nation, how we do that is that by our actions, by doing the right thing, that's what makes us so beautiful. That's how we get crowned with that glory. And in fact, we're told that Rabbi Elazar says that a person shouldn't say, it's impossible for me to violate the Torah. It's impossible for me to do something that's wrong. Instead, it's better to say, I want to do the sin. I know it's gone cold again, but I want to do the sin, but because the Torah tells me not to do it, I'm not going to do it. Right? That's the best way to do it. Is instead of saying, I'll choose the thing, I can never eat bacon, right? No, better to say, oh, I'd love to eat bacon, but because God tells me not to, I'm not going to do it, right? Because what does it mean to be a light unto the nation? What does that mean, that we're a light unto the nation?
Example.
So does it mean that we're better than anyone? No, we have the same desires and the same inclinations that anyone else does. So what separates us from the people that aren't Jewish? The Torah is the fact that we are able to channel our desires in a positive way, that we're able to be the master of our base inclinations. It's not that we're created better than anyone else. It's that we were given this tool with which we can become a light to the other nations and a role model to the other nations.
You do have different genetics.
Yes. And do those genetics make us better?
It's more challenging.
It's like a moral strength that we're supposedly inherited from the forefathers and foremothers, and it's passed down to us.
If I can answer your question a little bit controversially, people sometimes ask, like, they hear about religious people who do things wrong. And they're like, how could a religious person do something wrong? That's the answer. The answer is because they're not made any better. We have to become better. And unfortunately, Jewish people or religious people will have desires and will have base inclinations. And if we don't learn to channel them, then yes, there will be people that will fall through. But it kind of shows us, what that kind of shows us is that the Torah was given to Jews who are human. And it's a tool for us to become better, but only if we use the tool, right?
It all of a sudden makes us different, because if you want to be religious and you follow more religious life, you do all these things.
Yeah.
And
it creates a discipline for a person.
it creates a discipline.
It's almost like, I feel like we're setting an example for the world.
Yes, and that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to set an example.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if there's another religion that has so many rules, right? And it's not just rules about Shabbat and rules about kosher and there's like rules about our relationship with ourselves, and there's rules about our relationship with other people, and there's rules about how we conduct our business, and there's rules about how we, treat other people, and there's so many different rules.
How we eat.
How we weave
How
our
we
clothes.
What we wear and how we weave our clothes and etc. It's like such a soul curriculum, right? It's like a full soul curriculum that develops our soul, and it impacts even how we put on our shoes. There's rules about that as well. So yes, Andrea.
I don't know of any other religion that has 613.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Now, they're not all positive. I don't think it's 248 or negative and 300. It's not positive, but that it is in and of itself creates a difference from us and them.
Yeah.
It's very time centered and very ritual centered as well. And if you're living out in the wilderness and you don't have access, it's probably not the best place you be living. If you want to be engaged in your Judaism in a more intense and meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also a lot more fun to do it as part of a community than it is to, celebrate. Like, just think about it. We celebrated Tu B'Shvat together. We celebrate Shabbat together. It's supposed to be. And it's much harder to be nice to other people when you're living with other people than when you're living in a wilderness as well. So yeah,
Well,
so-
like to summarize everything you just said about all these rules, as opposed to a lot of religions, like they do it once a week on Sundays or whatever. Our religion, it's if you're once you get into the Orthodox world, then you realize it's a whole way of life.
it
It's
is
like
a way of
it governs every aspect of your life, what you're speaking when you get up, where you're going, who you're talking to, how you talk to them. It's just they're
Let's finish the last blessing before we see.
animals.
Does anyone want to do the last one? Who gives? It's a good one to say in the morning, and it's a good one to say because it doesn't just mean who gives strength to, gives us, hopefully we're waking up feeling a little bit more refreshed, to give strength to, we go to sleep at night tired, we wake up in the morning, hopefully feeling a bit more refreshed. But it also means sometimes we can be emotionally weary. And God also gives us strength when we're emotionally weary as well. We get through things. And as with any of these blessings, we can use them as a blessing to thank God, and we can also use them as a blessing to ask for more. So if it's something that someone needs, some more strength to get through something emotional or difficult, then that's a blessing where a person can have an intention to ask God to give them strength. Thank you, everyone. If anyone has any questions or thoughts or comments,
Thank you.
please